Hello and welcome. So let us start with our next session for history, lesson number 2, New Kings and Kingdoms. Today we are going to learn more about Prashastis and land grants. So now what are Prashastis? Does anyone know? So here a Prashasti is a piece of writing that highly praises someone. Generally, the Prashastis are written in the praise of the rulers or the emperors or the kings and leaders. These Prashastis contain details that sometimes may not be literally true, but they tell us how these rulers wanted to depict themselves, maybe as victorious, brave warriors, or as valiant. So these Prashastis were generally composed by the learned Brahmins who helped in the administrative parts. Now, as I said that these details may not be actually true, so that is right. Most of the Prashastis are written in the praise of rulers and it is mentioned about their achievements as well. But then sometimes the king would order the Brahmins to write something in praise of them, even if they have not achieved or attained that success. And even those Brahmins or the courtiers tried to note it down. Maybe in turn they used to get a lot of rewards, and that was the reason. Then one of the achievements of Nagabhat, a Prashasti which was found, and it is in Sanskrit. It was found in Madhya Pradesh, Gwalior. It tells us about the achievements of Nagabhatta. So, what does that say? It says the kings of Andhra, Vidarbha, Saindhava, and Kalinga fell before him as even as he was a prince. That means here they are saying that though Nagabhatta was a very young prince, all these different kings from these different areas were surrendering before him. It is also said that he has won victory over the rulers of Kannauj and he has defeated different kings, maybe from the parts of Bengal, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, forest peoples, Turks, and different kingdoms in North India as well. So, this is one of the Prashastis mentioned about Nagabhatta. Some of these events may be true, or some may be just a false praise about Nagabhatta. Then we move on to what are land grants. So now earlier when these kings were pleased with the work done by the Brahmins, kings often rewarded Brahmins by the land. So they gave a piece of land to the Brahmins and the Brahmin was the owner of that land now and these land grants or now this land belongs to so and so Brahmin was recorded on the copper plates. Here you can see the copper plates. Yes, nowadays also when we actually purchase some property or we are dealing for an apartment on rent or maybe we are purchasing it, we get the property papers, right? So these copper plates were like the property papers where everything was mentioned about who is the owner of the land, what all things are given to the Brahmin along with the land. So we also have a mention about what things were given with the land. Now, obviously, when we give the land to someone or we purchase an apartment, whatever is in the apartment belongs to us. But still, here things were mentioned on the copper plate that all these things which are available on the land belongs to the Brahmins. And then, what are the things he should not be doing on the land? So, this was the practice done during this medieval period. The next part we have is it is actually unusual that in the 12th century, Kalhana has written a Sanskrit poem, the name of which is Rajatarangini, and he has written about, or he was actually critical about those kings who ruled over Kashmir. He used to talk about their policies. So you need to remember that Kalhana has composed a poetry on the rulers of Kashmir, and it is a long Sanskrit poem, and the name is Rajatarangini. And he has used variety of sources to pen down his accounts. Maybe he has used the old inscriptions, certain documents, and maybe he has had one-to-one talk to the people or the eyewitnesses of the accounts, those who have experienced things during those days. I hope you'll remember this. You can even note it down on page number 20 of your textbook, as the name of the poetry is not mentioned there. So let's move. Yes. So now we are going to see about the warfare for wealth. There were different dynasties and different ruling kingdoms who were trying to establish their rule in different areas. Now here we are just going to deal about the three different parties, that is the Palas, then we have the Gurjara Pratiharas and the Rashtrakutas. Now these three dynasties were in constant fight, say almost 150 years of fight to capture Kannauj. So you can see this is the place Kannauj. Kannauj is in Uttar Pradesh. So as I said, warfare for wealth, and we are going to see what was the tripartite struggle. So in the tripartite struggle, we have three different dynasties or three different kingdoms who were fighting to get control over Kannauj. So those were the Palas, the Gurjara Pratiharas and the Rashtrakutas. Now, these three dynasties fought for almost 2 centuries. So, as I said, 150 to 200 years they had a fight to gain control over Kannauj. And why was it? Because Kannauj was a very prosperous region, and it was because of its wealth and resources. And during this fight, or this continuous struggle for so many years, weakened all the three parties or all the three dynasties, and the power of the three dynasties declined gradually. Now, how? So, here, as we said that earlier, the Rashtrakutas overthrew their lords, that was the Chalukyas. So maybe during 900 CE, these Rashtrakutas were overthrown by the Chalukyas. So Chalukyas again tried to get control over the areas of Rashtrakutas. Similarly, Palas were under a lot of threat of the Cholas. Now, when this struggle was going on in the Kannauj or in Uttar Pradesh, the Cholas were started expanding their empire in the southern part, and as they wanted to cover up more and more area of the subcontinent, even Palas were under their threat. And Gurjara Pratiharas finally broke up into smaller states. The different ministers, the different chiefs, and the next generations of the Pratiharas, they started dividing themselves into different smaller states. The historians has used the term tripartite as there were three parties involved in this struggle. I hope this is clear with everyone. Now, why did the kings wanted to control the Kannauj and Ganga valley? As Kannauj was rich fertile plain between Ganga and Yamuna rivers, it had already established business hub. It also had around 200 perfume distilleries. So a lot of business related to perfumes was going on in Kannauj, and it is known as the perfume capital as well. Now, during this medieval period, different rulers tried to build different types of temples maybe to show their power and wealth. But these temples were attacked by the different rulers who wanted to capture the particular kingdom, as well as it was a target for the invaders because sometimes the temples were too rich. Maybe some of the donations given by people, and maybe the king is hiding his wealth in the temples. So that was the reason, and even the idols were made out of precious metals. So these were the reasons why the invaders targeted the temples. And moreover, temples had less of security. There was no need of warriors or soldiers to be surrounding the temples, as it was not that important place according to the kings. So very rarely they had the security, and so invaders could actually attack the temple and then finally try to capture the different areas of the kingdom. So one of the examples we have is of Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni of Afghanistan. He ruled over Central Asia, Iran, and northwest of India, and he was one of the rulers who raided our subcontinent for several times. It said, I guess, almost 17 times he has invaded or raided our subcontinent, and every year he used to come. And he mostly targeted the wealthy temples. His major raid that is remembered in history was of the Somnath temple, which is situated in Gujarat. So this temple was actually raided and destroyed many times and was also reconstructed by the rulers several times. This temple was earlier looted by Mahmud of Ghazni, followed by Alauddin Khilji and even Aurangzeb. Finally, it is said that the Portuguese ruler looted the temple and destroyed it. So you can see that the temple was totally into ruins, and maybe now we have reconstructed it. He carried the wealth to his hometown now. Ghazni, whatever loot he could take, he carried everything, jewels, coins, precious metals. And now, can you think why did he do so? What did he do with all of the wealth? Yes, he took everything for beautification of his own palace in Ghazni. Right, so this is all about Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni. Let's move further. Yes, you can see this is Sultan Mahmud, who was actually interested in finding about people of the subcontinent, and he gave his responsibility to a scholar known as Al-Biruni, who had to write an account of the subcontinent. Now, Al-Biruni was appointed to write about the everyday routine or some great happenings that were going on in the subcontinent. And Al-Biruni has composed everything in his Arabic work known as Kitab al-Hind, which proves to be a very important source for the historians. So while making the records, it is said that he has consulted many Sanskrit scholars as well. So we should say that yes, Al-Biruni was really a scholar and he had an urge to learn different languages as well. So let's see more about Al-Biruni. So this is Al-Biruni. His name Abu Rayyan Muhammad ibn Ahmad al-Biruni. He was an Iranian scholar and a polymath. A polymath, who is a polymath? A person of wide knowledge of learning. He was well versed in physics, mathematics, astronomy, and even natural sciences, and also distinguished himself as an historian, chronologist, and a linguist. He was conversant in Persian, Arabic, Sanskrit, Greek, etc. He has spent much of his life in Ghazni, that is the modern day central eastern Afghanistan. He traveled to the Indian subcontinent and authored a study of the Indian culture, which is compiled in Tariq al Hind. This is all about Al Biruni, you should know. So now, after discussing about the tripartite struggle and how Sultan of Ghazni invaded the subcontinent, let's see how different other kings and rulers were engaged in the warfare in the subcontinent during that time period. So one of which we know about Chahamanas are the Chauhans who ruled the regions around Delhi and Ajmer. They were restricted by the Chalukyas of Gujarat and the Gadwals of Uttar Pradesh and were not allowed to expand their kingdom in those areas. So Chalukyas and Gadwals were very powerful in those times who could restrict these Chauhans from entering Gujarat and western Uttar Pradesh. Then we also have heard about Prithviraj Chauhan, who was the best Chahamana ruler or who was the well-known Chahamana ruler. It's said that he has defeated an Afghan ruler known as Muhammad Ghori in 1191, but immediately the next year, that is in 1192, Prithviraj lost to him. And then it is believed that Prithviraj was being taken as a prisoner by Ghori, and then during some archery competition which was held in Ghori's court, Chand Bardai helped Prithviraj to use his archery skill even though Prithviraj was being made blind by Ghori. Using a poetic language, Chand Bardai helped Prithviraj so Prithviraj could kill Muhammad Ghori using his archery skills. And finally, it is said that instead of getting killed by the servants and soldiers of Ghori, Prithviraj Chauhan and Chand Bardai, who was the court poet of Prithviraj, stabbed each other, and this way Prithviraj also breathed his last. So, this is all from my side about today's session. Any doubts, any queries, note it down in your book. I will solve your doubts in the next session when we meet. Till then, take care, dear children. Thank you so much. And most important, do stay safe.